arguing, fighting, bickering. These are all some of the things that we do with our siblings. So I know I can't call it a day until me and my siblings had at least 3 arguments, somebody's crying, the piece of cake that I've been saving since school has been eating. So, like for example, this spring break, I went to Mexico and I left a bag of cookies in my house. My brother does not live with me, but somehow he smelled those cookies all the way from his house and then sends me a picture in Mexico, while I'm in Mexico, of him eating my cookies. So distance does not stop us from arguing, and although that siblings might seem a pain in your butt, today I would like to enlighten you the different types of ways how siblings can be useful to you. So I'm going to talk to you about from them getting you out of trouble, from them buying you stuff that you can use, or even like borrowing their clothes. So all parents say they don't have a favorite, but I know in my household, like if I were to ask my mom for something, she would tell me no. But if my sister were to ask her for something, then I know it would be a definitely for sure yes. So a lot of times, for example, when we were little, when we would go to Chuck E. Cheese, or when we would want to go to Chuck E. Cheese, I'd be like, oh, I really want to go, but dang, that quiz that I just took in my math class, I know my mom's going to say no. So me and my brother would be like, oh, go ask her, she'll say yes to you, and then nevertheless, like we'll be in the car on our way to Chuck E. Cheese. Another thing that was big in my family is this rosary, which basically means we're Hispanic, so basically means that we all have one of these, so as long as we all have this, that we're all together, and that we shouldn't be afraid to talk to one another, and if we ever need anything, to always ask for it. So going off of that, if you have older siblings, like my brother is 21, so, well, he's over 21, but if you ever needed alcohol or cigarettes, he's always one call away, and especially with that big symbol of us, he's always protective and saying, okay, I'll get it for you, but just be careful with it. And then another thing about having older siblings, a study showed that about, in the Netherlands, a study of 390 families, that the younger sibling seems to be more aggressive and have more attitude. And me being the youngest, I find that true. So a lot of the times I would find myself having trouble in school with people. So, which is another good reason why to have an older brother, because they can always fight your fights for you, which isn't always good. But for example, when I was in middle school, there was this guy who kept picking on me. I don't know why, but something happened in my family. I'm 5'2", brother's 6'3", sister's 5'8", so I don't know. So one day he picks me up from school, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy that's been like taunting me. And so he goes up to him, and he's like, oh, so my sister's been telling me that you guys had a problem. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that that was your sister. And he completely gets all scared. And then another thing about having siblings is you can borrow, it's like a whole nother closet for you. You can borrow whatever clothes. So like today, my sister doesn't know, but these are actually her shoes. So we have the same shoe size, which is good. Another thing is that we also like to go shopping together. So whenever I don't have money to buy something, and she's like, oh, I'm like I'm hesitant to buy this, and I know deep down I like that. I'm like, yeah, you should buy it. So then later on, it'll like go missing in her closet, and it's actually I'm wearing it. So it's actually her buying me that stuff. And then another study, and then arguments, which I guess is a good thing about having siblings, is you have comebacks and you know how to defend yourself. A study showed with siblings between the ages 3 to 7 year olds often engage in conflicts about 3 to 4 times in an hour, which we're all older than 7, but I feel like we act like 7 a lot. But it's still kind of good to know, so then when you're at school or when somebody's picking on you, you can defend yourself, or you can know how to put up an argument, or when you're in the debate club, that would always come in handy. So overall, having siblings is a good reason, so they can get you what you want, they can defend you, and they can also protect you.
All right, let me start by pointing out that that was a good example of an informative speech that's got a speech to entertain built into it. So you're talking about something that's fun, you get to make some jokes along the way, plus you add in some research to kind of back up your ideas. I like that. I thought you did a nice job kind of integrating those two things. So content-wise, you're doing pretty well here. I think you need a little bit more work on some of the transitions between points, because it doesn't always feel natural and smooth. And when you got to the summary, you hit the key ideas, but you need to have a little example or incident or something to make that point feel more complete, as opposed to, I'm just checking off that I've got a summary. It's really, here's a real summary that you're providing. So I can see that you've got all the technical things there. And I think I've said this before, anytime you're learning something new, you kind of go through different stages. And there's a stage where between when you are aware of what you're doing and when what you're doing comes naturally, and you're kind of at the awareness level. You're doing the right things, but you're aware that you're having to do all those things, and you need to get to the more natural state. But structurally, everything is really solid and the content is good. Now, delivery things, a couple of things. I think that you are animated in your facial expressions. I think you get some emotion into the voice that you have there. There wasn't anything that was problematic on almost anything. I think you were solid on most things. The two things that maybe you want to pay a little more attention to, something that is an issue, your posture. You are standing there with your legs crossed 85% of the time, and the times that your legs aren't crossed, you're just moving and you're transitioning, because when you stand still again, you've got your legs crossed, and it might feel comfortable to you, but it looks awkward. It puts your posture in an odd position. I keep waiting for you to fall over. It's a little bit like when your mother says, put a sweater on, I'm cold. And you're perfectly fine, but I'm watching you and you feel fine, but I think the people watching you are going to feel uncomfortable because it looks a little unnatural. And even though it doesn't seem that way to you, I think it does feel that way to most of the audience. So you want to pay attention to that. And then the other thing is your eye contact. You have a tendency to kind of look down and you're scanning in front of us instead of really looking at people. And I think you'll see that. You probably know that you're doing that. You'll see how noticeable it is when you watch the video. So try to talk to us a little bit more. Let's face it, you're talking about some fun stuff. You've got funny anecdote about going to, get your sister to ask about going to Chuck E. Cheese instead of doing it yourself. Or, I'm actually wearing her shoes right now. Or my brother, standing up for me in that situation. You got some cute stories to tell. It's fun stuff. You should just be talking to us. It's, and if I'm listening to you, for the most part, that's what you're doing. When I'm looking at you, it doesn't quite feel that way. So you need to create a little bit more intimacy that way. So nothing bad, mostly good. Couple things to work on that were noticeable. All right, thank you.